Welcome to the podcast. We do recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
Hey, welcome to episode 110. Today we have a special guest. I've known this dude since high school. I'm super excited to have him on my podcast. I've only been asking him for like over a year to make an appearance on here. So today I'm excited to have him on. He goes by the name Daniel Fosmark, a.k.a. Debo, a.k.a. The Foz, a.k.a. Big Red. Should I just keep going?
You can keep going all night.
Danny Fosmark, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm fantastic. I'm blessed to be here, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to work this thing out. And we were talking before we came on here, and I think everything happens for a reason, man. I'm glad that it's your butt in that seat today in this studio. So thanks, brother.
I wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
Yeah,
it's probably good I didn't make it down here before.
Absolutely. We're going to jump into chopping it up with Foz here. Before that, though, episode 110 is brought to us by High Desert Counseling. High Desert Counseling is a progressive substance abuse treatment facility with a practical approach. They offer day treatment, morning and evening IOP, continuation of care, and Prime for Life programs. Check out their website at highdesert.help or give them a call at 435-673-2899. Their facilities are located in St. George and Cedar City, Utah. We appreciate them sponsoring this podcast. Episode 110 is also brought to us by Rise Up Supplements. Rise Up Supplements is a nootropic line aimed at optimizing brain function and supporting mental health. They offer two powerful blends. Mindful Mood helps decrease anxiety and enhance mood, while Mind Shift helps increase focus and optimize brain function. Place your order today by going to riseupsups.com. That's RISEUPS.com. At checkout, punch in podcast 20 to save 20% off on the promotion code. We appreciate them sponsoring this podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Foz. So you're on here. Man, let's just throw out the formal outline. Let's just shoot from the hip, man.
I love it.
I feel like today just needs to be God-inspired day, you know?
I feel like that's how we lived our lives. We lived everything from off the cuff. So we started that way. Let's end that way.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's do it. So I've known you since high school, right? We played football together,
Yes,
ran with
sir.
some of the same crowds, did a lot of stupid stuff together. Only got caught for about 10% of it, give or take.
Luckily, that's why we're both still here.
So yeah, man, I'm glad you're here in the studio today. Let's talk about, this is obviously a podcast about recovery from addiction. Back in the day, when I like knew you and we were hanging out in the same circles, you're a year older than me, a legend in the shot put, one of the best offense and defensive linemen Clearfield High School's ever had.
Thank you very much.
Come from a whole legacy of phenomenal football players.
Definitely. Long family of good football players.
Back then, though, man, there wasn't a whole lot of substance abuse going on, I don't think. Like, I don't really recall a whole lot. I know that we both had some surgeries.
Yeah, mine started real early with my first shoulder surgery was when I was a junior in high school. So I started with pain pills back like, early 2000s, around the year 2000.
Do you think looking back at that time, though, do you think looking back at that time, were you taking them as prescribed, or do you think that you were abusing them back then?
I think I was taking them as prescribed then, but I had 5 shoulder surgeries in the subsequent 4 years. And I think that coupled with graduating high school and my friends going on missions, so that's a Utah cultural thing, and not knowing really what to do with my identity at that point. A lot of the people that I had formed my identity with that you knew growing up.
Yeah.
Jared Wilcox, Mike Tulane, those
Jared
people.
Buckley.
Yeah, Jared Buckley, Luke Houlihan, all those guys that I'd formed my identity around. Some of those guys, we kind of all branched out and did our own thing. And I went up to Weber State and I was on a a track scholarship and I couldn't play football anymore. And that was a path that I didn't necessarily plan for myself. I wanted to play football. So I was already let down from the goal that I had put out for myself. And so I already felt like I'd fallen short. And so my life is a lot of me not meeting the expectations that I felt were the way that I needed to live my life.
Okay.
And
So our listeners probably don't know this, but I know you pretty well.
yeah,
Are you okay if I just hit you with some personal questions?
hit me.
So your brother was an All-American at Weber State.
Yes.
Brady Fosmark.
Yes. Football player. Yes.
The dude was like a legend. And he wasn't that much older than us, man. I remember
2
watching
years.
him and like Trevor Russell playing, right? Like they were basically the dudes that kind of showed us the ropes. Do you think that maybe that was more of a personal expectation that you were trying to live up to
Absolutely.
your brother's legacy?
Well, yeah, definitely. I was trying to live up to my brother's legacy, my dad's legacy, kind of a Fosmark name legacy. My dad was a college football player, so it was just kind of what I wanted for myself.
You felt like in some way, shape, or form you kind of missed the bar, or you weren't quite
Absolutely.
enough. So there's that. And then, like, let's just face it, this is what, 2006 around ish?
Yeah. By the time I had gotten all the surgeries, it was 2006, and it was Oxycontin City, because that whole thing had gotten real bad with Purdue synthesizing that whole.
Bro, you know what's crazy about that? Before we met up for you to come to the studio, I'm talking with my father-in-law, and Dave. He's a great guy. He's one of these magical folk, though, right? He's a normie. He doesn't always understand it. And so him and my mother-in-law Pam, they watched that show.
Okay.
What's
The one
name
on
of it?
Hulu
Yeah, on Hulu.
that Michael Keaton did?
Yeah, man. Why can I never remember the name
like
of that?
Dope Sick or
Dope
something
Sick. Yeah. So they were
They
watching.
did a good job.
They did. And he was like, you know what? I get it now. I understand. Like, there's a whole lot of people that were victimized. And now listen, I don't think of myself today as a victim. I feel like I've gone through everything I've gone through for a reason and for a purpose. But there was a lot of people that affected. We, safe to say, were in that Oxycontin generation.
Absolutely.
And bro, it was crazy. Like, I was kind of joking and saying, my wife had to have surgery a couple days ago, and they gave her a bunch of ibuprofen 800s. And I'm like, the stuff, the size bottles they gave me for my surgeries would make this look small. And it was like 120 count, right? Like back then, man, they were just throwing it at you.
Yeah, it was such a different world. And no one knew what they were doing. And we weren't educated as patients, and our parents weren't educated. I have discussions with my parents about this, and our doctors weren't educated. And if you watch that show closely, you can tell that there's a lot of darkness that's gone into like the pushing of that. There's a lot of people that need to be held accountable for making those labels look the way they looked, and making that all seem like it was very, very.
It was a money grab, bro. It's a money grab.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't
They made
take
it seem
into
like it didn't have
accountability.
knives attached to the shiny sparkly letters, but those were hooks.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
For sure.
absolutely.
They got a lot of people, and they still do to this day. And we've lost 1 million friends. Like, me and you could toss around names all day of people that we've lost to this disease, and we could do that for the next 40 minutes, and we wouldn't miss a beat.
Right.
And we could shout out names the people that we lost to this disease because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think today we're in a different epidemic, right? Like, the Oxycontin thing's over. Fentanyl is going crazy right now. It's just scary in and of itself.
Just a different monster. It's a different head of the beast.
And we're both fellowship guys, right? Like,
Absolutely.
we both. So I don't want to you know, the whole first step is, you know, you got to look at all your justifications and rationalizations. And at the end of the day, we got addicted.
Oh, yeah. There's a personal accountability that has to be taken on everyone's part. So at the end of the day, everybody's got to get clean for themselves. And so we're talking about recovery on the back end of it, right?
Right.
Because we're already into the recovery thing. And so you're doing your podcast and I'm been recovered.
I guess I didn't state that, but that's just the obvious assumption. You're on here. You're in recovery. Right?
I'm in recovery.
He's in recovery, everybody.
So,
yep.
so I went through, I went through 10 different rehabs, religious affiliation, non-religious affiliation, AA affiliation, just all sorts of affiliations and all that stuff. And really,
did you think that you were like Baskin Robbins 31 flavors and you were just trying to try every flavor of treatment, or what? Were you giving Robert Downey Jr. Downey Jr. a run for his money?
I was trying my very hardest to figure this thing out.
I love you,
and
bro.
I just couldn't figure it out, man. I was like, this seems like a good way to go, and I would try my hardest. I'd fall flat on my face, and then I would try something else, and I would do really well at it, and I'd fall flat on my face. And at the end of the day, it was like the honesty, being honest with myself, and all those things. And I had to go through all of that, but my journey had to take me all of those places. And it had to take me, even in sobriety, it had to take me through some very, very dark and murky waters over the last year and a half, and 2 years, 2.5 years. And I've had to make some really hard decisions and leave some circumstances that I haven't wanted to do. I haven't wanted to have to face the things I've had to face in sobriety. And I had to make choices whether I could go and create more wreckage like I had in the past.
Right.
And get more charges and create more wreckage and destroy more lives and pick the pieces up from square one again. But we're getting old.
Yeah.
Right? We're not getting any younger.
Bro, let me pause you just for a sec. It reminds me of this saying that I use all the time. And I love it because it's spot on. So I'm going to get hypothetical for a sec. You ready?
I love it.
So we're back in the Western day, right? You know, the old cactus blown across in the breeze, dirt roads, right? You got to tie your horse up before you go in the sheriff's office.
If I could whistle, I'd do the whole thing.
There it is, Sean Denham.
Yes, thank you, special effects guy.
So a dude gets off his horse. He walks into the sheriff's office, and on his way in, he sees a dog laying there, and you know, the old hound dog sitting on the sheriff's porch, and he's whining. Walks in, he says, "Sheriff, man, your dog's in pain. What's going on?" Sheriff says, "Yep, he's laying on a nail." He said, well, Sheriff, are you going to get up and you going to go move him? You going to pull out the nail? What are you going to do? Sheriff says, "Nope, he'll move." The guy says, well, he's out there yelping. Like, when? Sheriff says, "When the pain gets bad enough, he'll move." And it just reminds me of that, because you're talking about all the wreckage. You're talking about, and I hope people don't have to get to a low rock bottom. I hope they're a high rock bottom type people, right? Because I think that the sooner that they can have the willingness and search out a better way of life, the better. But sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes the wreckage. Sometimes it takes the charges, the trips to jail.
Absolutely.
What did that look like for you, man?
What did that look like for me? Oh boy. How much time we got? I have 3 DUIs, some thefts, an assault, from the years. I'm off paper now. Like, I don't have.
That's like the obvious wreckage, though, right? Like somebody could background check you and know that stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
what's the internal wreckage, right?
Internal wreckage.
It's like, I know you got a sweetheart for a mom, Julie Fosmark.
Oh, dude, don't
an
even
angel
start
in the
with
flesh.
me. Don't start with me, because we don't have Kleenex in here. I don't see any Kleenex. We got one Kleenex, and dude just told me he wasn't feeling very good when we started this thing, so I'm not wanting to touch his Kleenex.
On a serious note, though, right? Like, I think because
the destruction that I've been able to accomplish, and that I've been able to remedy or been able to make amends for.
Yeah.
And I think reconciliation takes two people. So forgiveness takes one person. I can forgive all the things that have ever been done to me, and people can forgive all the things that I've done to them. But reconciliation takes two people, and it takes movement in that direction. Okay. And it's a walk. And that takes two people walking in simultaneous in the same direction.
Okay.
And it's got to kind of be a dance in order for it to work. And it's not something that just gets decided all in one. It's a journey kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
And so I think when both parties are pushing towards that reconciliation and they're doing the best they can, and as long as they're both working towards the goal, I think that relationship can sustain and can move forward. Now, when someone decides they don't want to work on that anymore, then the decisions have to be made. And
I love how you're dancing around this question.
what's the question?
Pause, my man. The wreckage. You talked about the charges, right?
Yes.
Now, listen, the reason why I bring this up is because today we want to talk about recovery. You know, this is a podcast about recovery. I don't want to spend too much time on the problem. I want to make sure we're talking about the solution. I had an experience this week that completely shifted my perspective on a lot of things. I've had some sleepless nights. I've had a lot of time to think. And I'm going to try to do this without me needing some Kleenex, but Mandy and I found out that we lost our baby girl over the weekend. And loss is a part of my story.
Yeah.
My dad,
Mine too.
brother,
Yeah.
friends, right? And we could go off on that whole thing for a hot minute. But the hardest thing for me in losing our baby girl over the weekend was watching my wife be in pain, emotional pain, and not being able to do a dang thing. Heavy.
That's heavy.
What it made me think of on one of the nights that I couldn't sleep because I was up sick to my stomach. Oh, man. I wonder if this is how my mom felt when I was running around. She had no idea where I was. She had no idea if I was dead in the ditch. And she's slowly watching me kill myself. Right? Like, don't you start, because then I'm going to start, bro.
Son of
And so if my mom's listening,
Son of a beautiful woman.
I don't know that I entirely understand it because I'm not you, Mom. But I kind of get it. Because watching my wife go through probably the hardest thing she's ever gone through in her life and not being able to do anything has been brutal.
So that gave you perspective.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful thing.
Thanks, man.
That is a beautiful thing. What an insight.
This is supposed to be about you.
But look at that, though. That's beautiful.
Have you ever considered, right, when we talk about the wreckage, and I realize bust out the waiters.
I apologize to my mom. Like, she'll vouch for this. I apologize to my mom for screwing up minuscule tasks on a daily basis. I feel like if I can, like, it never gets heavier than when I think about the kind of like pain that I've put my mom through.
Yeah.
That's one that I'll never be able to ever give back to her. Like, and she'll never ask for it back. That's why she's the most beautiful woman in the entire world.
Yeah.
She'll never ask for it back from me. And every time I say, I'm sorry, she always says, it's cool. No worries.
That's that
Just do
unconditional
better.
love.
Just do you. Just You know what I mean? And I even texted her today, as a matter of fact, like here. And it was over something dumb, like took pictures of like a popcorn maker, and I just haven't put the pictures on KSL to sell them. I just been lazy, dude.
Something silly.
I'm in a funk. Like in recovery, folks, it is not all rainbows after you get recovery. In like life comes at you, and like you have to decide whether you're gonna take all the hard things of life and you're gonna revert back to the things that you used to do to cope with that, or you're gonna move forward in a positive direction. And moving forward in a positive direction means you get to sit across like two blubbering grown men on a podcast and cry about it. Or you can go to a bar and be drunk.
Right.
And then we can go create wreckage in our lives, right? Or we can do what we do now and we create beautiful memories, you know, that will forever be.
And heaven forbid heaven forbid that we feel a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
hey,
trust me, I get it. Sitting in uncomfortability is my least favorite thing to do. But you're right? And I'm glad you brought that up. Is today is painful as the stuff that I'm going through. Obviously, I'm an addict, right? I have that neural pathway in my brain that goes, we know how to fix this. We know how to take this away.
Yeah.
First thought
there
wrong.
is a solution to this.
Right. That I'm sorry. 8 years later, my brain still does tell me that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm any less stronger than anybody else in recovery. That means I'm an addict.
Yeah.
Right. Now, listen, if I choose to act on that choice again, if I go out and use, my disease didn't just kick back in. I made the choice to reinitiate that disease, right? But it's still there. It still calls to me. And like you're saying, how I deal with it, how I cope with it is what makes all the difference. One thing that we're kind of talking about, coping skills and how to deal with when life gets lifey, for me is like playing the tape forward. I recognize that I could go and I could get loaded. Like, sure, that's an option. I'm going to wake up the next day and it's not going to bring me any closer to a solution or going to take the pain away anyways, right? It's going to compound the problem.
Yeah. If anything, I got to deal with what happened during that time that I was checked out.
Right.
And now I got more to deal with.
Well, and today,
frankly,
that looks like, I know you're a personal trainer. You could lose your, what's that called? Your license, your certificate?
Yeah, certifications, or I could use my standing with my boss who's gone out on a limb with me.
Right.
And hired me and given me a chance to come to his gym and represent him because he's a man of upstanding, he's an upstanding man in the community who's looking to do good for the community as well. And if he lends his name to someone who goes out and causes wreckage in the community, then that's not good. It's not good. It's not a good look on him. It's not a good look on me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I did that for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And that's not something I want to continue to do. So I get to make a choice when stuff hits the fan, and it has.
We're going to get into kind of some of those things and some expectations in part 2, right?
Yes, we are.
I do want to get out of you, Foz. So my coping skill is play the tape. If I have a golden nugget for the listeners, it's play the tape forward, right? And my thing too is I distract myself long enough that I give myself a chance. I do what my sponsor tells me to do. If he tells me to go to a meeting, even if I don't want to go to a meeting, I go to a meeting, right? Those are some of my coping skills. What are some of the coping skills you use that you can share with our listeners when life gets lifey?
Ooh. I have a lot that I do, I think. There's like 3 podcasts that I listen to pretty religiously.
Let's get them.
Muscle Intelligence, Ben Pekulski. He's a bodybuilder guy. I think he's in tune with a higher, something bigger than just bodybuilding and just medicine, on a
spiritual level.
He's in tune with the body. Andy Stanley, he's a pastor out of Georgia. I think he's looks at the Bible the way that it needs to be looked at. He addresses people's hurts and hangups, I think, more than the legalism of religion.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to take a look at more, because there's really 2 commandments: love God and love your neighbor. So
I love
that's
it.
the way I try to do it.
Man, thanks for being on here, and thanks for letting me ask some hard family questions, Foz. We'll be right back after this short mention from our sponsor.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller. Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the Hilton Garden Inn.
High Desert Counseling is an adult outpatient substance abuse treatment facility. We offer multiple services including day treatment, morning and evening intensive outpatient services, continuing care, and Prime for Life. What makes us different is our emphasis on gathering all of the information before enrollment. We do this by offering a thorough evaluation by a credentialed professional. Once we have committed to you and you have committed to us, don't worry, insurance will not dictate your treatment. Lastly, the pretzel effect. We are a brief intervention where we connect our clients to community, mental health, and medical professionals to help maintain recovery for life after treatment. At High Desert Counseling, we strive to be the bridge from active addiction to recovery, community, and connection.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
Whew. You made it through that first part, boy. You got me and Big Foz over here, Big Red, choked up over here talking about wives and moms, and man, it's been good stuff. It's been good stuff. Episode 110, part 2, is brought to us by the Hilton Garden Inn. The Hilton Garden Inn, it is always sunny and bright at the Hilton Garden Inn.
It's a great place.
Yeah, if you or a loved one want to take a little vacay, a little getaway, you want to check out southern Utah, a.k.a. God's country, go ahead, pull up your Google browser, type in Hilton Garden Inn in St. George, Utah, and check them out. Give them a shot at your business. They have great amenities, great customer service. I always, talk about how phenomenal and how clean the place is. That's where Danny's staying for the duration of his trip down here. So
they treated us right.
Yeah, we appreciate the Hilton Garden Inn. Okay. Sorry for the low blow, bro. I guess we never established, man, that moms were off limits.
It's okay. Well, they're never off limits, but whenever I talk about my mom, I get a little frosty.
And listen, to be completely honest, me and you have gone on a couple different recovery podcasts and we shared our story, right? Yeah. The Other Side of Hell.
Yeah, Other Side of Hell.
Podcast. You've been on Casey Scott's Project Recovery. Mm-hmm. We're giving all these other podcasts a plug. Hopefully they give us a plug back, but that's okay. We play nice with others. For the most part, I do. But I wanted to get something different.
Check those podcasts out, by the way. They're fire great. Recovery podcasts. Yeah,
they're great. I wanted to get something different out of you today, Fosmark, and I know based on our history and stuff. So,
yeah, I've known you longer than I've known any of those guys, and I've known those guys quite a while. So
yeah. So,
history.
Getting kind of back to, we talked about the problem, right? We're the OxyContin generation, man. That's us. That's what happened to us. We both had surgeries that were sports related, both got physically dependent on those things. I think for the reasons why, like whether it was coping with unmet expectations, for me, grief and loss is a big trigger of mine, right? We ended up the same place. We were addicted. We were strung out. We struggled. So there's the problem. Part 2, we typically talk about life and recovery in the solution. Maybe we jumped into that a little early, which I'm totally cool with.
It's where life is, man.
We had a couple weeks ago, Cy Hershey on the podcast. Do you know Cy Hershey? You need to know Cy Hershey. Great dude, right? Really good dude. He does interventions with like Hollywood people. He's like, you know what I mean? He gets people into these bougie places.
High personality guy.
Yeah, great dude. And his story was a lot like yours, very, how do I put that? A very successful family. A very prominent, known family, like the Fosmarks, the Hersheys were. His dad was. Anyways, get to it, Jared. He started out at these kind of really nice, bougie, fancy treatment centers, And bro, when you would disappear, you were like gone to like Oregon and like some pretty nice
Seattle for a year.
Right, bro? Like you had some, like you were getting Charmin wiped, dude. Like,
no, that was not what it felt like.
Yeah, well, listen.
It did not feel like Charmin.
Do you know what my rehab was, bro? They came and picked us up from the jail. Okay, I was a Medicaid baby. So
I did that. That was my last time.
But here's the thing. Here's the correlation, right? You started off with kind of these bougie places.
Okay.
And then you ended at Odyssey House.
Yeah.
Which plugged to those guys.
Changed my life, bro.
Here's what I'm getting at. I truly believe. Now listen, I work at a treatment center. And I'm still going to say this. And hopefully you just know I'm authentic by me saying this. The treatment center isn't always the thing that gets somebody clean. It's got to be the individual that finally has the willingness, has the motivation, has the discipline, whatever it is, because it needs to be a combination of those things, right? But ultimately, it was the person.
The lesson was always there. The lesson has been repeated to me so many times that it finally clicked.
Beautiful.
And so it was never that the lesson was lacking. It was that I could not hear the message.
You just weren't ready, I don't think.
I was not ready to hear the message. And once I was ready to hear what that message was, I could. And I have been able to hear it at different degrees at different times of my life. And I've been able to put together times of sobriety. And then I've been able to, like, that's been clouded. And it's like being in tune, spiritually in tune, right? It gets foggy or stuff happens and it gets cloudy and you lose contact.
Right.
And then you find yourself in positions that you didn't originally intend to be in. You never, when you first start this whole journey and you pop that first pain pill, you don't think you're going to be shooting up heroin.
Right. I mean,
Never think that.
Right.
The first time someone pops a pain pill, they never think, I'm going to be shooting up heroin in a couple of years.
Right.
It's never the first thought. But it happens to a lot of people.
It does.
It's just the simple fact of it because it's a brutal, brutal thing.
And whether that's alcohol, whether that's heroin, whether that's meth, right?
It can be anything.
Fill in the blank, whatever your substance is, because
it can be
all
food,
mind-altering substances.
it can be work, it can be the gym, it can be whatever you want it to be. It can be another person. Listen, folks, it can be another person more often than not.
Sounds like you've got some experience around that, Foz.
I have a lot of.
Hold on, though. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. Let's use the time wisely. So you left Odyssey House.
Yeah.
The most important piece in your recovery story was that you came to my wedding shortly after there.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. That's just a personal plug. I appreciated you coming to my wedding.
Shouts.
So from that point on, I mean, how did you get here? How did you get 2.5 years clean?
So I got out of Odyssey House inpatient. There inpatient. I was in there sober living, and this was when COVID was kind of at its kind of rampant. People were super scared.
Oh yeah.
And so we were kind of locked down in our, like when I got out, it was like December 10th. I want to say it was like 2021.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And it was crazy. I couldn't go home for Christmas and I was in sober living. Like I'm a grown man, I'm 36 years old, and I can't go home.
Why?
Because we're a high risk community.
Oh.
And so going home and then coming back to that community.
They were afraid you were going to come back with COVID.
Risk. I could come back with COVID and infect the whole community.
I'm tracking now.
So the paranoia and the fear was really real at that point.
Yeah.
So it was a really hard time for me. Like early recovery, 6 months in, and I couldn't go home for the holidays. Yeah. So I stayed there and I made it through and moved back to Ogden and got an opportunity to come back and start personal training. And so I took that opportunity.
You've always been into fitness.
Yeah, I was a college athlete.
Yeah, like
high school athlete, college athlete, and always really into fitness and never did it always kind of like help people out.
Yeah.
I never really thought about doing it professionally. And then a friend hit me up that I've known since junior high and gave me an opportunity to come out and gave me a shot at doing some personal training stuff. And so I
at about
took
6
that.
months, you started doing the personal training.
Yep.
So you found passion. The point
I did. I found a
is,
purpose.
Yeah, found passion.
So I found a
purpose.
purpose, and I was going through IOP, and I was in Odyssey House as outpatient.
Right.
And I didn't have my license and stuff, and I was grinding it out, and it was like COVID, and man, it was crazy. I had like this job doing shipping for a Volkswagen parts store, and I was going to IOP, which was 4 hours in front of the computer looking at talking heads. Like, and recovery was super hard. But I made it. I moved out and got a place with a roommate. And then shortly after that, I started working, got my license, and stuff started going pretty well, and kind of got back onto the dating scene, and met a gal, and that went really well, and kind of fell into the whole wanting to wrap up my recovery story in like this nice bow. And there was a lot of things that looked really good. Like it all like kind of came together, and it all looked really good. And so I kind of, and I can only take, like, there's a lot of different sides to the stories, right?
Sure.
And I can only take.
But let's get yours though, right?
Yeah.
Because you're the guest on here, and
Well,
I know you. You're a classy enough guy. You're not going to deface, or you're not going to, put anybody in a bad light.
Yeah, I just I got myself into a position where maybe I hadn't done all the necessary internal work that I needed to do in order to make the decision I needed to make before I got married.
Okay.
To really make sure I was really good with all of my stuff inside, to make sure I was putting my best foot forward for somebody.
Let me go here. You've heard of the, stay single for a year. Your first year in early recovery, you stay single, you don't date, right? Because there's a oxytocin in the brain when you meet somebody else, right? Which feels a lot like
bonding chemical.
dopamine, right? Which makes you can become, and I know this probably sounds far out there, but I promise you there's some research behind it. Otherwise it wouldn't be kind of a general rule. You look for validation, you look for a chemical release in another human being, and in a way it's addict behavior.
Yeah.
Because
it's fulfilling a need.
Yes. And instead of doing what you're talking about, Foz, instead of doing that internal work and getting to know yourself and falling in love with yourself to where you're okay regardless of what your significant other does.
Mm-hmm. I'm letting someone like basically fill the void that I need to fill myself.
Boom.
Like I need my recovery and my recovery, the way that I look at myself, fill how I feel about myself, not how someone else feels about me.
Right.
Because that can be pulled out from under me.
Yes.
Because that can change, or things can happen that can change that. Like dynamics change sorry.
You're okay. Let me throw it out there like this while you're collecting your thoughts. Typically where most people make their mistake in their first year of recovery, and I've seen this, I've lived this, I do this for a professional, right? Like I'm a substance abuse counselor. This is my job daily. I see this all the time. They try to build a life and then bring a little bit of recovery into it. So work, relationships, right? They're building a life, which to most people, they go, yeah, that sounds normal. You want to rebuild your life. Yes, but you're not quite ready yet because you don't have the fundamental pieces and you haven't done the work yet, right? It's like trying to build a skyscraper without a solid foundation. If you don't have your footings in and they're not deep enough, you can only go so high.
Yeah. Before you start feeling that.
Right. So follow me, keep tracking here, listeners. In that first year, we want you to build recovery and then slowly bring life into it. Right. So what that looks like is building a relationship with yourself, building a relationship with your community, building a relationship with your employer, right? Like building a life in recovery that's sustainable so that you can slowly start pulling some life back into it. Relationships are a big thing. They take up a big portion of our life. If you think about it, besides sleeping and working, the majority of the time, most of us spend time with our significant other, families, right? Those relationships. So if you introduce a significant relationship into somebody that hasn't done the work, hasn't built a life in recovery, and is slowly bringing other things into it, that's what they start to build.
Yeah.
Right? Is that they're building a life based on this other person. And then they try to find time for meetings. They try to find time for step work. They maybe call their sponsor when they're not busy, with their significant other.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
As much as you don't want that significant other to be the priority, as much as you understand that the recovery has to be the priority, when you haven't done the proper work beforehand, you can't do that.
Right.
Like you didn't set it up properly. You didn't put one foot in front of the other. You did like A, C, then B. Right.
Right.
Like,
You're skipping steps.
Yeah,
man.
you're skipping steps and you're putting everything in order in the wrong sequence.
I also think it's important.
And I did that.
I also think it's important, and we're going to get to that. I also think it's important to admit to the listeners that we're not preaching to you. We're sharing from personal experience.
These are big mistakes.
That we made these mistakes. We put our, external validation in others, and we've learned from it. What does that look like for you?
For me, that's in the form of marriage that didn't even last a year. And it caused more wreckage, unintended wreckage of kids and that aren't mine, but I wanted to be mine, and a woman that I didn't intend to hurt,
right?
And that got hurt, and a lot of pain that I'm going through that I didn't intend to inflict on myself, because now I've got a whole nother set of issues to deal with where I don't trust a soul anymore.
Right.
So now I got this whole other jaded side of my life that I now have to process and deal with that I didn't have before.
Right.
I didn't have that. I wasn't a ruined kind of guy yet. And now I kind of am.
Yeah.
Like I kind of went through that. Like
So
I kind of got.
Hypothetically, you wanted to just skip the footing and start building the skyscraper, and then realize.
I thought I was equipped. I thought because I had done all the work over the years and now I had put it all together, I thought I could do all the work in different pieces,
Different
and then
phases.
and then I could put it all together. And now that it looked all right, but I didn't know that I didn't know that I didn't have the proper footings.
Bro,
in
we
place.
should be like philosophers. We should. We're talking pretty hypothetical here. And I love it because I think there's some powerful principles in there. So basically, you weren't quite ready for a marriage, but you felt like this would be a pretty ending to my recovery story.
Yes, and that wasn't all just. It was a combination of what I made my life look like, what she made her life look like, and the reality of both of those things.
Oh, yeah. Everybody
and how
puts their best foot forward
their
when they're
best
first
foot
dating.
forward,
Yeah.
and there's all the pillars of today's adult dating world that go into that, and past relationships, and the hurts and hangups that people have from their lives, and and all that stuff, and then there's substance abuse that goes into there, and it all gets real messy real quick.
Yeah.
And if you're not really careful, you can find yourself back in the bottom of a bottle or bottom of a jail cell.
Right.
Luckily,
Or the bottom of a spoon, right?
bottom of a spoon. wherever that takes you.
And I love that.
It's taken me different places and different facets of my life, and it didn't have to take me anywhere significantly down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one blessing that I think that's one thing that my recovery can speak for. Now I can stand on my recovery now is that it didn't have to take me to a jail.
You didn't have to completely burn your life down.
I didn't.
You could just maybe have a kitchen fire and
Small,
without the whole building burning down.
Well, I don't know. It feels, we might have had like a small structure fire, but I think we'll be able to like salvage at least me.
Yeah.
In this whole thing. Like, but
please don't feel like I'm laughing at your situation. Right. But it's the truth behind it is you didn't throw everything all away.
No, I could have, and I could have created a bunch more hurt for a lot of people.
Sure.
And I just didn't, I felt like, and I'm still going through it.
But why? Why do you think that is? Like, so I know you came down here with a dude today. I know you do some things that are the foundation of your recovery. So like, even when we fall flat on our face right out the gates of recovery and we think we're special, we can date within a year, we'll get married within a few months, right? Like you obviously doing some recovery things that made it so that you didn't have to burn the whole building down. What are those things? What saved you? I
think I have an awesome, unique connection with higher power today that like is cool. Cause I just like I yell, I get in the car and I can yell. And sometimes the words aren't necessarily very nice, but like, I think if my God's as big as like, if I think he is and that everyone says he is, and I say he is, then he can handle me being upset every now and then, like with what's going on. And, but I keep really close to the people who count. Like I have friends that like, I have like really solid people. I have a couple friends, and like my mom, my dad.
We have a common friend. So I shared earlier, in the first part of this, kind of the tough thing that me and my wife are going through at the moment. And I get a phone call. Do you know a guy named Billy Plume?
Always. Yes. Billy Plume.
Coach
the Marine Guard.
Coach Plume, right?
Mm-hmm. Our football coach. And we coached for him.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, that's true.
We were coaches for him. And
huge
we went to Long Beach.
Yes. Long Beach, California. That was fun.
Coaching seminar. That was crazy.
What I'm getting at is sometimes in recovery, our support system is a sponsor, is our fellowship, home group, right? All those things are very important. Sometimes it's just healthy people that, Coach Plume doesn't know. He's not, right? He doesn't walk the path that we've had. He teaches health and he has some education. He has some understanding, but he's a solid mentor.
I got lunch with him like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. He called me when my life was on fire. Like we need those type of people in our life.
He's called me when my life was on fire more than once.
Yeah. Yeah.
He just seems to know.
Yeah.
And he doesn't struggle with what we struggle with.
I think our moms tell on us, if I'm being completely honest. I straight up
some
called him out on it.
There's some sort of thing going on.
I called him out on it.
Conspiracy by all our mothers to do make God and all our mothers to do good for us.
Yeah. Our higher power communicates through our mothers and Coach Plume. So yeah, the point I was trying to make is I think that's a big piece too, right? Is having that support system there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have his friend, Heather, that she just seems to get me, like one of those people that just like seems to understand how to just let you kind of be you.
Yeah.
And
they can
whenever
look
you're
at you
struggling,
and see your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got some
just
friends
kind
like that.
Get it. She can just get me, and Mark, the guy I came down here with, is one of those people too. All my heavy conversations are done with those people, usually. Yeah. Them and my mom. My mom's still to this day, just still solid, as solid as can be. The most solid person I've ever had in my life, for sure.
I love it. The theme of this, and listen, I know your mom's proud of you. I watch as she shares your stuff, and you know, she's always been supportive of all the different things that you got going on, man. The theme of this, that if I could kind of summarize, is just because you're in recovery doesn't mean that you make all the best decisions. Just because you're in recovery doesn't mean that it's all sunshine and rainbows. Like, we still go through a lot of tough stuff. One thing, and it's just a personal pet peeve, when somebody says to me, just don't pick up and everything will be okay. Well, guess what? I haven't picked up, and guess what? Not everything's okay.
No.
So the clinician in me, the counselor in me, the message is this for the listener. Picking up will compound the problem. It's okay to not be okay, man. It's okay to feel like your world's on fire. It's okay to have sleepless nights. And again, not picking up isn't going to, like, the mental health side of things is it's okay. It's okay to go through some tough stuff. And to be able to realize that picking up, all that's going to do is hurt it. You got some cool stuff going on in your life, Danny Fosmark.
Yeah.
What do you got going on, man?
Yeah, let me talk about that for a second. I started my own training company. It's called Valhalla Rising. And I do it at a Lions Pride Barbell. And we're in Layton off of McCormick Way. We're online, lionsPrideBarbell.com. We're opening up a combat facility. So if you're in Layton and you want to get some jiu-jitsu, boxing, anything like that, we are in Layton, lionsPrideCombat.com. We're opening that February 11th. I do my personal training at a Lions Pride Barbell, and we're just looking to build our community. We're also going to be starting doing some nonprofit organization stuff. Just trying to get kids in gyms, like letting them know that they don't have to do drugs. They can come hang out in gyms and get strong.
I love it, bro. Check out Danny Fosmark. You can see him on all social media. Support our people in recovery.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of its sponsors. This has been a production from a podcast studio.